Well, while the spending package that Congress passed just last week is in the rearview mirror, it seems like forever ago, but it was just recently. President Trump's administration is teeing up for a slew of new legal battles ahead. Several states are reportedly joining that lawsuit Blake was just turning about, that California suit. They're preparing to file against President Trump's move to declare a national emergency at the border to get his funding for the proposed border wall. As of right now, these are the states included: New Mexico, Oregon, Minnesota, New Jersey, Hawaii, and Connecticut. Colorado has just been added to this growing list. Let's bring in our next guest to discuss. Heritage Foundation's Fiscal Affairs Senior Policy Analyst, Justin Bogie, along with the Center for American Progress Economic Policy Managing Director, Andy Green. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Andy, I want to start with you. 8 states now, plus the ACLU, planning to sue the administration over the national emergency declaration. So the courtroom fight, this can get pretty long, pretty ugly. How do you see this ending up, Andy?
Well, I think the court's going to have to do the right thing. The Constitution is very clear that the Congress has the power of the purse. The Congress pass appropriations bills into law that provide the president some authority to move money between certain accounts. But the president did not have authority to move the money as he is doing. And so he is in clear breach of the law and the Constitution. And the vast majority of the American people do not support him on this. It's wrong, and the courts will have to strike it down.
But Justin, the president said he expects to be sued. He's going to take this all the way up to the Supreme Court. What do you expect to see happen there?
Right. First of all, I would just say that I think it's disappointing that Congress couldn't work with the president and find a resolution that would have avoided this outcome. But beyond that, it's within the president's powers to declare an emergency. He has broad power to do so, just like it's within Congress's power to disapprove of that resolution. But ultimately, I think this is going to have to be something that the courts work out and decide.
Andy, describe the mood, if you will, in the White House right now, if you could imagine. The president probably sees a loss with respect to what happened with trying to get that $5.7 billion for the border wall, and now he's going the national emergency route. At the same time, Andy, Democrats are digging in their heels, and they're trying to solidify their positions for 2020. Whether it's the Green New Deal or something else. What's the mood?
Look, it's one loss after another. The president shut down the government, leaving 800,000 American families without a paycheck for 35 days. He finally rolled over on that when he realized he couldn't get his way. And so he is, Congress did a bipartisan deal to fund the government, the 9 agencies, according to the levels that the Congress set, according to a bipartisan budget deal in 2018. He signed that, and now he's still unhappy and trying to have his way through this emergency declaration that he himself said he didn't have to do. And it's not that important. So it looks like one loss after another and chaos at this White House. And I think it's really about time the president recognized that, the House of Representatives is taking a new direction that is standing up to him. And it needs to work with the House to actually address the real priorities of America, which are things like infrastructure, prescription drugs, and addressing the threat of climate change.
Okay, the first 2 could be bipartisan in that list. Justin, do you think that Democrats and Republicans can agree to get something done?
I would hope so. And I think prescription drugs, infrastructure, those are 2 important things. But something nobody's really talking about here that should be a bipartisan issue is the national debt. Every American right now owes almost $70,000, or that's their share of the national debt. It's going to go up about another $30,000 over the next 10 years. So we really need to get together, find ways to work on this before the problem becomes even worse. And, Congress is really left with no option but to really raise taxes or drastically cut services. So I hope we can turn the focus towards that.
Yeah, the $22 trillion debt, we were just watching the clock. It's $3 billion a day, and it just keeps growing. And it speaks to the fact that the budget system is flawed, Andy. That spending bill was 1,200 pages. How do we make sure that we can always keep the government open? We don't have a future shutdown, and maybe we could avoid these continuing resolutions, which just kick the can down the road.
Well, look, it was amazing that during the transition to to the Trump administration, the debt clock that was in the House of Representatives magically broke down. And then what we saw just months later was a rushed through tax cut for the wealthiest people and the largest companies that ignored the CBO estimates, that ignored the usual process, and left $2 trillion of debt on the hands of the American people, and actually ended up raising taxes over the long run for working and middle-class families. So, you know, if you add on to that, plus 2 unpaid wars, plus the Bush tax cuts of 2001 and 2003, there you have, you know, the huge chunk of the deficit. Meanwhile, you add on the financial crisis of 2008, which put millions of Americans out of work and blew a hole through the deficit. And what is Trump doing? He passes another financial deregulatory bill. So I think we need to start looking at who's fighting for the American people and who's playing games.
Yeah, and speaking of fighting, if screen left, we were just showing live protests going on this President's Day across the nation. Justin, at least 8 states planning to sue the administration over the national emergency declaration at the border. How long do you expect that to get held up in the courts?
You know, I think this could go on for several months. But really, I'd like to push back on what Andy said just a little bit. I don't think this is a problem of not enough revenue. Revenues are basically at the historical average over the next 10 years. This is a spending problem. And until we get that under control, start talking about how we can fix Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and make those programs more sustainable, then we're never going to get the debt under control.
Yeah, and the debt has grown under the Trump administration, $2 billion, under the Obama administration, $8.5 trillion, and the numbers are just getting bigger and bigger. Justin, we have to end it there, unfortunately, guys. I know we can talk about this for a while. Justin, Andy, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.